Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Best of the week. So heavyweight news in the past week that's caught my eye that I wanted to discuss. The Fabio Wardley-Fraser Clark debacle that is separate to this video. But I would note, 3 weeks and counting now with no significant action in the heavyweight division. Not even just guys that are in the top 20, but not even mid-level prospects. So it really has been a wasteland. And I have been discussing since the end of last year that the heavyweight division, things have been going a bit downhill. And I've been discussing the idea of a heavyweight recession. I think we're deep into it now. So it's a shame, obviously, but at the same time, when it's been quiet, I've also been very busy with work. So in some ways, I haven't been under pressure to do a lot of videos because there hasn't been a lot of content. But in this past week, what we have had, Joyce has activated his rematch clause against Zhang Zhilei. So obviously he was stopped in, about half a dozen rounds or so, 7 rounds against Zhang not so long ago, and he will look to run things back. Well, I mean, that's one option. The other possibility is that it's financially motivated. Remembering, Tyson Fury is with Top Rank in Queensbury as co-promoters, and you have Queensbury promoting Joyce. Joyce, even after the fight, said, well, maybe I could have another fight, then face Zhang. Tyson Fury has been talking about a fight for July. Zhang is one of the names that's been mentioned. Andy Ruiz Jr. just in this past week has been ruled out because of financial demands. So maybe Zhang's going to be Johnny on the spot. So by activating his rematch clause, he could actually be doing this for a financial purpose, his management, to make sure that he gets paid some step aside, and then that clears the way for Zhang and Fury. That could be one possibility, or he just goes straight back into it. And I guess the question is, if it is next, is it repeat? Is it revenge? Joyce he didn't quite look like himself in that fight. He was a little bit lighter. Have been questions about whether that played a factor in durability. But at the end of the day, besides getting rocked by a big puncher in one of the early rounds, it was the lack of defense, blocking punches with his face, that really let him down, and his eye just got all mashed up. And clearly that ended up being what led to his demise. So stopped on advice of the doctor. And we've been saying, I mean, it's no secret, Joyce's defense is really his offense, because he doesn't really try to block punches except with his face. So if he can't do anything different, well, it could be the same result. Sometimes that whole styles make fights really plays into it. And for Zhang, this just could be, a guy who's in front of him with little defense. It's going to be money all night if he can land his power punches. And he is a big puncher, Zhang. And that showed in that fight where he was able to rock Joyce with head punches early, which we haven't seen anyone able to do before that. So either way, it's interesting if he steps aside and Fury faces Zhang, or if in fact he goes straight back in, because can Ismail Salas' trainer come up with a game plan to do something a little different? And you have to say, if you go back and watch it, Zhang was starting to look a little bit like the gas tank was almost on empty. He put a lot into those rounds where he was having success and mashing Joyce's eye up. So had it gone longer, who knows what could have happened, but shoulda, coulda, woulda. We're going to get the rematch potentially. So yeah, I like it. I mean, we've got almost nothing really on the schedule in the next few months in terms of the big names, guys in the top 10. So this is a good one. And just quickly, so you've had, obviously a lot of talk of the Saudi tournament, purses allegedly being leaked, and then they're higher again when you see the next story. I'm not really looking to talk about that until we get something that's concrete, because at the moment it sort of seems a little pie in the sky, and I think it's actually holding up the rest of the division, because these big names that should be in the big fights are holding out, and it would be at the end of the year as well. So we'll see where it goes. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, well, just make a fight and get into something. That would be my comment on that. Jarrell Miller, so he's been confirmed in an exhibition against heavyweight prospect Antonio Zepeda. And you may recall Zepeda was the one that stopped Christopher Lovejoy. And that was pretty embarrassing, that performance by Lovejoy in that fight against Zepeda. He just basically quit, fell down, did a lay down sell, he didn't want it. But it's a good indication, this fight, of where Miller's at, because Zepeda is not some chump. He's going to come with ambition. He wants to take the scalp of Jarrell Miller. Even if it's just an exhibition and it's not counting against the record, we're going to get a better indication of where Miller's at. And with some of the opponents Miller's faced so far not being, having much risk or danger, coming with them on his comeback after another drug ban, this is interesting. So I'm looking forward to sort of seeing the fight. So that's in a couple of months. Antonio Zepeda, he has said, and he posted it days before Miller posted it, but he said, I'll be fighting against Jarrell Big Baby Miller in a 4-round exhibition. It's going to be huge. Don't miss out. Looking forward to it. Carl Froch, who's said some controversial things in the past about different fighters, seems to be a little bit bitter when he's compared with, people maybe who are building a legacy. He says that Anthony Joshua is past his best and he's probably got no real legacy. Pretty brutal comments. He said Joshua doesn't need to retire, but I would say that AJ is past his best and on the slide. I don't know where his motivation is now. It can't be money. He says it is, but he's made a fortune. So when you've earned so much, how much do you need? That's one of the reasons I retired, because I'd earned enough money and I thought, I've got everything I want. So why am I going to get punched in the head and risk getting injured? I've got kids and there's risk and reward. AJ's had a fantastic career financially, but maybe it niggles him that he's probably got no real legacy. He's not in the Hall of Fame, unlike the Cobra. Not to have a dig at him, but you have to look at yourself as a fighter and ask, why am I in the game? Am I in the game to make a fortune? Of course I am. I can do it and be one of the lucky ones, one of the few who gets out the game financially free with their health intact, and he's done that. But he's not going to go down as an all-time great with the fights he's had. Losing to Ruiz and back-to-back fights with Usyk, what does he want? What's he fighting for? He said money. But money's not motivation when you're fighting. Trust me, you don't think about money when you walk to that ring. If you do, it's a bad attitude and you don't perform. You perform from wanting to be world champion, wanting to perform for yourself and fans, to get a legacy, to be a Hall of Famer. You have to be in love with the sport. Carl Froch's statements on Anthony Joshua. And I know some people will say that Froch is just a hater, but I think there's more than a dollop of truth with what he's saying. I mean, I think looking back, some of the opponents at the time seemed like they were very solid opponents, but maybe some of the wins haven't aged as well in his career. Some guys that he's fought haven't really done too much afterwards. And generally, if you fight someone and they go on to do something great, then obviously that makes the win age better. I mean, you've had Carlos Takam, he's had a couple of decent wins. Joseph Parker hasn't really done too much since. And there's guys like Eric Molina, Dominic Brazil, Charles Martin, a couple of losses to Usyk. He did get a win over Ruiz. I think he's been a good fighter. He does have some good wins. Is he a Hall of Famer? He has been a unified champion twice, so he probably will get in on that. And you have to say his impact, not in recent years, but those sort of 2015 to 2019, he was just one of the hottest things in boxing. He was a cash cow, stadium fights and all that sort of stuff. Also wins against Povetkin and Pulev, albeit they were older. There's some good wins there, but I can see what Froch is saying. Some people will defend Joshua to the hilt, but I think the other question about motivation, it's a good point. What's he fighting for? And he has said money. I mean, money's not necessarily the be-all and end-all when you've already got tens of millions, if not more, in Joshua's case. So what is getting him up in the morning? And based on the recent fights against Usyk, he doesn't want to change the fighting style. He's not the guy pre-Ruiz that was, he had something about him where he was going to go after guys. He's been a lot more careful, a lot more reserved and risk-averse. Even in the second Usyk fight, he did better than the first, but he said he was going to do something to Usyk and go out there and, immediately after the first loss, and ultimately he wasn't able to go out there and sort of let his hands go in the way that he said he would. He just kind of did the same thing again, just a little bit better, but it still wasn't enough. Still a good heavyweight, but there are questions. Is he past his best? Where's he mentally at? That mad rant in Saudi. There are things that you kind of like, where's he really at? because I think if he faces Deontay Wilder in December, which is being discussed, is that going to be a fight that retires Anthony Joshua? Because he's looking like a guy that is past his best, that doesn't really know how he wants to fight. And if Wilder connects, he could do some serious damage. And actually, in another story, the Froch had said he feels Deontay Wilder knocks Anthony Joshua out in one round. I think the number of people that think that Joshua would get knocked out by Deontay Wilder has risen in recent years with Joshua and his performances. So, I mean, you can never say never with, you got to have the fights. There's all sorts of things that can contribute to a performance and all that. But there's a lot of red flags with Joshua at the moment. Hughie Fury says that he wants Deontay Wilder as well, that he's gunning for him and he's going to make a statement, also gunning for Anthony Joshua. I mean, Hughie Fury, he's been out with long COVID, was meant to face Michael Hunter a couple of times last year. It never happened. So we'll get to his comments and then a few thoughts. He says, these are the fights that I want. I believe I will get them fights and that I would be the best. I'd knock Wilder out. I'm not here to play games. People don't understand. I've had a bit of a rest. I've filled out. I'm now 19, 20 stone. People don't understand. I'm here now and I'm going to make a statement. I believe I am the best and I'm going to show that in the ring. Well, Hughie Fury has largely to date in his career been a bit of a nearly man. He's gotten into some big fights, lost them all, and has looked just okay in those performances. Doesn't seem to have a huge amount of power, doesn't seem to often have a huge amount of ambition. But, he has won some, he's got some okay wins, but at the top level, he's fallen short. He has tried to be more aggressive in the recent fights before he was out for, about a year and a half and counting. But, I mean, it's big talk, and he's with Boxer on their stable. So what big fights can he really get? I'm not convinced. David Adeleye. So this was announced as a card he's headlining on the 9th of June by a Queensbury card that'll be on BT Sport. They are investing in David Adeleye. He had a good performance last time out against Dimitri Bieses, knocked him out with a beautiful left hook. He's a guy who looked extremely raw, had been underwhelming in some performances, and with some training in the United States, he has looked better. So I'm looking forward to sort of seeing the progression, but given there's no opponent yet, we have to, keep our expectations in check. And the other thing is he's been calling out the likes of Fraser Clark, Fabio Wardley. Whether he's really ready for those names is another question. I mean, we need to see him against some guys of about the similar level, or even that Kamil Sokolowski rematch. Where's he really at? Because a lot of guys, as they continue up in their prospect phase, once you get to a certain point, if you've got anything about you, you should be beating Kamil Sokolowski, and handily. David Adeleye struggled in that fight, didn't throw enough punches and arguably got outworked. But we're talking that's almost a couple of years ago now. So I wouldn't mind seeing it run back, but he'll be out again Friday at the 9th of June. We'll see what they do. So he's defending his, WBO European heavyweight title, first defense. So, a trinket, they'll probably bring in some subpar European. That would be my guess, but we'll see. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.